Now, the eighth person who reportedly met with Donald Trump Jr. Last summer has been identified, according to the Daily Beast. Now, it might surprise you, or might not surprise you to know, that he is not only Russian, but he's also an accused money launderer. Oh, this is interesting. Now, let me give you some details. Now, the man's name is Irakli Kavaladze, and he was a guest of the Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya when she visited Trump and other members of Trump Tower last year. Now, this is according to Trump's lawyer. He was talking to CNN. Now, the meeting was proposed by billionaire Russian real estate developer Ares Aglarov. Okay, these names are killing me, by the way. Now, that billionaire is supposedly friendly with Donald Trump, having hosted Miss Universe pageant in 2013 and had discussed recent real estate deals as recent as 2013 in Moscow. So, that's interesting. Now, the June 9th, 2016 meeting, they write, was originally characterized by Trump Jr. as primarily about the adoption of Russian children. Yes, yes, they're very, very concerned about adopting Russian children. No. That's actually not true. Adoption, they don't care about adoption. No, when they brought that up, that's when Donald Trump Jr. was like, no, I'm not interested in that. Where's the dirt on Hillary? What's going on here? I thought you promised me dirt on Clinton. You didn't deliver. Now you're talking about adoption. I don't care. Yeah. Doesn't interest him at all. He was gone. Now, in that same meeting was, Jared Kushner, brother-in-law, and former campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Now, those 8 visitors included Rob Goldstone, the manager of Aglarov's pop star son, who reached out to Donald Trump. You also have Veselnitskaya, that lawyer with some ties to Russian officials, who lobbied on behalf of Kremlin interests, mainly from the sanctions. Her translator, Anatoly Semochornov, Veselnitskaya's DC-based lobbyist, Renat Akhmetshin, who was also once accused of an international hacking conspiracy, wonderful, and Kavaladze. So, look, hey, man, that is a lot of Russians, okay? A lot of Russians, a lot of Russian names. Okay, all packed into that meeting. Oh, that's weird. Now, so who is this guy, the eighth, right? The eighth that has now been identified, and why is he important? Well, he's apparently an executive of something called the Crocus Group, Aglarov's Russian-based development company. So he's a real estate guy. Okay, well, it makes sense that he would know or be interested in Trump because Trump was also a real estate guy before he became a, celebrity apprentice or just a celebrity and then president of the United States. Okay, makes sense. Sure. Now, Kavaladze's LinkedIn page says he began working for Crocus Group in 2004, but a Russian webpage for the Economic Chronicle says he started in 1992 as Crocus's U.S. associate. So Kavaladze had also immigrated to the U.S. from the former Soviet Republic of Georgia back in 1991. So, okay, the guy's a Russian immigrant. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, what is wrong is what he allegedly started doing when he actually got here. Federal investigators say Kavaladze immediately began laundering money for the Russian government. Uh-oh. So here are the details on that. Kavaladze was the president of International Business Creations. Now, that is a Delaware corporation. And that actually is super important. Now, between 1991 and 2000, IBC and sister corporation EuroAmerican had moved $1.4 billion from Eastern Europe through the U.S. banks and back to Europe. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, once found in the year 2000, Kavaladze was not named in the report, but he was reportedly identified as an accused figure in that money laundering scheme. That's interesting. Now, Kavaladze, of course, told the New York Times in 2000, I ain't got nothing to do with that. All I see is that this is nothing more than a Russian witch hunt in the United States. Does that sound familiar? So, now, I'm going to get slightly conspiratorial for a second. This guy's accused of money laundering back in the early 90s. Who happened to be president back in the early 90s? Think about it. Think about it. Think about it. Clinton. Bill Clinton, in this case. I wonder if this guy might have something against the Clintons because the government under the Clintons said, hey, you're funneling money. You're laundering money. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Curious. Now, more details about this alleged scheme. IBC and EuroAmerican created corporations for Russian brokers and established bank accounts for those corporations, according to the GAO report. The bank accounts were opened at Citibank and the Bank of New York. Now, approximately 2,000 corporations were formed for those same brokers, the GAO found, and 236 bank accounts were opened at Citi and the Bank of New York. An employee of EuroAmerican told GAO the firm created about 10 corporations at a time for Russian brokers. So this is somebody at EuroAmerican, one of the banks, was saying, yeah, we open these corporations, these shell corporations, 10 at a time. 10 at a time. Wonderful. And of course, they do it for these Russian brokers. Now, interestingly enough, they sometimes make up the names for these companies, and EuroAmerican charged a fee of $350 for each company it incorporated, so they got a lot of money from this. There was money exchanged. Now, the president of IBC told the New York Times that the bank accounts, told the Daily Beast that the bank accounts were formed to move money out of Russia. The GAO report reads, apparently referring to Kavalatsa. It adds that he confirmed that he'd misled the banks about the due diligence he'd done investigating the banks. So it's like, no, I didn't look at these banks. It turns out they were funneling money. I didn't know. I had no idea. He also told us that EuroAmerican is currently being liquidated due in part to concerns about money laundering issues that were raised in 1999 when the media reported allegations that Russian organized crime had laundered billions of dollars through the Bank of New York, according to that same report. Now, it also concluded that it is relatively easy for foreigners to hide identities and funnel money to the U.S., due in part to the failure of Citi and Bank of New York's failure to implement Know Your Customer policies. All right, so that's a lot of information. So basically what he's saying, man, hey, look, I didn't know there was money laundering going on at these banks. I had no idea. I didn't vet them. And all this is, it's a misunderstanding. I'm nothing more than a victim. This is just a witch hunt. That's all this is. Well, look, let me be fair. Super fair here. The media doesn't exactly make it easy when all they scream about is Russia. And so when something legitimate or seemingly legitimate comes out about what some well-connected, wealthy people from Russia are doing, money laundering, which happens. It doesn't only happen in Russia. It happens in a lot of different places. Hillary Clinton was money laundering, okay? But she was doing it in a new legal way, using a joint, using her Hillary Victory Fund, okay? So money laundering happens. It's not just the Russians that do it, but the media's in a constant state of hyper-Russophobia. So when you actually come up with something that does seem worthy to talk about, everybody is like, no, it's Boy Who Cried Wolf. Now, the problem with crying wolf is that when a wolf actually appears, well, nobody believes it. And that's the problem here. But anyway, now this was a thing, of course, that happened often, okay? Robert Hess, the managing director of the GAO, told the Daily Beast that at the time, there were actually thousands of companies set up for money laundering. And the way that they were able to do that is because you had lax regulations and rules in Delaware. Delaware is one of those business-friendly states, okay? So, again, it's one of the biggest homes of corporations. All right, I wouldn't be surprised that at some point, Delaware becomes home to more corporations than people. So, look, when you have lax rules and regulations, it makes it very easy for them to incorporate there and to launder money. And in fact, at that time, Russians, organized crime mixed with former members of the KGB, they set up a lot of money laundering schemes because they were out of work. In fact, you had Hast saying, this wasn't too long after the breakup of the Soviet Union. A lot of these people, these organized crime members and former KGB people were like, I don't know, I got to do something for money, right? So this is very interesting, right? About what's going on about this whole money laundering thing. Okay. Now, Trump goes to this meeting with these people to get dirt. Okay. Now, is that illegal in itself? It's collusion, but is it illegal? That's the question. There's no question they colluded. But is it illegal? Well, that is, of course, it would only be illegal if he had received information worth of any value. It would count as a campaign contribution. Now, Trump Jr. says, well, I didn't. Okay. And as far as we know, he's correct. He came out with all of his emails. He said, look, I did collude with the Russians, but I didn't get anything. So I didn't do anything wrong. Well, ethically, yeah, he did do something wrong. But is it criminal? So far, no. At least from what we know now. Now, he also did not meet with anyone from Russian intelligence or anybody close to Russian intelligence. And that's another thing that seems to be going around. But as Scott Olson, a former FBI counterintelligence agency, explained, the meeting size and attendees would not make much sense as a Russian intelligence operation. So this is not the Russian government coming in and saying, we want to collude with you, Donald Trump Jr. So get that out of the way. Okay. But what it is, and he's going to explain, if you're going to have a covert meeting, it's got to be two people. If you have more than two people, it becomes exponentially more difficult to keep the meeting confidential and the content of the meeting confidential, so it would be super dumb. So no, this isn't a Russian government op to try to meet Donald Trump Jr. Well, what was it then? Well, the people at the meeting, Veselnitskaya and Akhmetshin and Kavaladze, he says that there were not the sort of operatives intelligence agencies usually recruit. So, quote, they're not reliable, they're too difficult to train, and I'm really seeing people who are trying to curry favor so they can leverage it into political or business connections. Okay, there you go. Now, those connections, they might not be legal if there involves some quid pro quo between a foreign national and a political campaign. Now, between two people, okay, if you want to make a business deal, whatever, between two regular people. But again, if you're part of a political campaign, you cannot receive gifts from a foreign national, whether it be Saudi Arabian, whether it be Russian, whether it be German. It doesn't matter. Whether it be from people from the UK, doesn't matter. Allies or not, you cannot get any sort of gift or information, or that includes information, from a foreign source if you're in an American political campaign. Just saying. Okay. Now, and that's because collusion itself isn't illegal. So now, let me get to what I think the meeting was. I think it was just an attempt for some of the Russian billionaires to curry some favor by getting Donald Trump Jr. into a meeting under false pretenses so they can try to get what they want. So what did they want? Well, they keep talking about adoption, right? Now, adoption, that's actually code for sanctions. Now, you might be thinking, come on, dude, that's crazy. What does adoption have to do with sanctions? Hear me out. Now, Vladimir Putin had banned adoption for Russian children coming to America. Now, that's in response to sanctions based on Russia over the death of an anti-corruption activist. Now, it's called the Sergei Magnitsky Rule, Law of Accountability Act of 2012. Now, the main intention of this law was to punish Russian officials who were thought to be responsible for the death of Sergei Magnitsky by prohibiting their entrance to the United States in their use of the banking system. So, that's what they mean by adoption. If you want to have those children be able to be adopted by the United States, get your dad, if he becomes president, do us a solid and remove the sanctions. That's all we want. So that's the subtext of the entire meeting. Remove the sanctions. And the promise of it was damaging information towards Clinton. Now, as far as we know, they did not have such information. But the whole point was to persuade Trump Trump Jr. to get his dad to remove the sanctions on Russia, which would, of course, help Russia. It would also help, I guess, people who cared about the children. Maybe Veselnitskaya actually really cared about the children and was like, hey, these sanctions are stupid. That's why I've been lobbying against them the whole time. Think of the children. Believe that if you want. I'm not going to tell you whether or not what to, I'm not going to tell you who to believe her story or not believe the story. Okay? So there's that. Now, again, that entire meeting, straight up collusion. Again, not illegal. Okay. Now, as far as this guy, the eighth member, who's an alleged money launderer, look, the reason that it matters is that it really kind of shows you the character of Donald Trump Jr. Okay? The fact that he would go to such a meeting with these kind of characters. I mean, and it's a huge cast of characters that this is becoming. And you got like a guy who helped put on the, 2013 Miss America pageant. You got a pop star. You got some real estate guys. You got an alleged hacker. You got an alleged money launderer. You got a lawyer who is looking out for the children. That's weird. Super weird. So, but it does kind of show you the kind of lengths that Donald Trump Jr. would go to help his dad win an election. And that is, of course, the mentality of the Trumps. Hey, win at all cost. I don't care who you meet with. I don't care what you do. I don't care who you scam. I don't care. As long as we win in the end, the ends will justify the means. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.